Fire the generals now, before it's too late. Before it's too late to what, you may ask? Before American interests are so desperately harmed that we can't recover. Now, that sounds like a pretty strong statement to make. And then you may be asking even, well, what generals? Nearly all of them. All the generals that we've been having that are both on active duty, that were on active duty, or that have been retired and are going on television all the time, I cannot stress to you enough how bad their advice is and how contrary it is to actual military reality on the ground. And when we're listening to them and they're giving us advice about things that we should do in contradiction to the actual reality on the ground, they're leading us down a path, especially if our leaders follow their advice. And most of them will, because they don't know any better, because they didn't serve. They haven't been in combat, so they don't know, or they don't care. And they're just, hey, that sounds good. It's popular, so I'm going to go down that path. Don't know, don't care what the actual purpose is. If we keep acting on this advice, our interests are going to eventually be so harmed that we may not be able to recover. Now, let me just talk to you a little bit. Let me show you a little bit about what we're talking about. Now, first of all, I'm going to show you really from the start of the war up until very recently, just this whole list of some of our senior guys who were either generals, admirals, or the commander-in-chief, as you'll see at the end. Listen to what they're saying, and let me tell you why it's a problem on the back end.
We will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes to keep them free, sovereign, with their territory intact.
As an American, I could never imagine anyone telling us when to stop fighting, and I can't imagine that we would ever tell Ukraine when to stop fighting.
As long as it takes means as long as it takes, and President Zelensky gets determined what victory looks like. What we've said is we're going to continue to help them defend themselves, defend their sovereignty, win back their territory, as they should.
I think it's very much in the interest of all NATO and all Western countries to make sure that Russia cannot succeed and that Ukraine is able to liberate all of its territory, join the EU, join NATO.
Having already provided a very substantial amount, $44 billion is not trivial. It's very necessary. In my view, this is as right versus wrong as it gets.
We are going to stick with Ukraine, and all of the alliance are going to stick with Ukraine as long as it takes. It's worth fighting for as long as it takes. And that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it. So they're talking about right versus wrong. This is as right versus wrong as it gets, and we have to keep doing this, and we're going to keep doing this for as long as it takes. We keep making those statements over and over. If this sounds familiar, it should, because these are the same kind of nonsense that our generals have been talking about for decades, of claiming one thing is true when something on the ground shows the exact opposite. Now, I first brought this up for public consumption about 11 years ago. I wrote for the Armed Forces Journal while I was still on active duty in April of 2013. I said, we need to purge the generals. And in that, I came to the conclusion that we have to replace a substantial chunk of today's generals, starting with the 3- and 4-star ranks. This is likely the most controversial step, yet also the most necessary. It is unlikely that today's top leaders, who are products and benefactors of the existing systems, have the appropriate motivation or buying for substantive change. New leadership is desperately required. Now, the reason that I said that, and what went on throughout the rest of that article, was just laying this whole long series of things that the generals had said in public that actually were not true on the ground in Afghanistan and in Iraq. Now, both of those things have just shown in spades that the generals were wrong. I mean, how many times did General Petraeus or CIA Director Petraeus go before Congress, or many secretaries of defense or deputy secretaries of defense, all these people in Congress, all these generals, all the time going on TV, incessantly telling you things are getting better. We're on the right azimuth. We've made the changes necessary. The Afghan people are getting better ad infinitum. You remember it. How many times did you hear that from the generals? I'll tell you, every time. Anytime there was a general on television or before Congress, they always told you that. What happened in August of 2021? Everything they said was exposed as a lie. Now, people like Matthew Hoh, myself in that article and several others I wrote were saying, well, here's the ground truth all the way through. It was always evident. In April of 2021, finally the reality imposed itself on the spin and no one could claim anything else. And who did the media turn to in August to explain why things went bad, but the very architects of the disaster themselves, leading with David Petraeus? He's the one that told them all, it was always somebody else's fault. I had everything in a good place, but then other people messed it up. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, now then things have not changed. No generals were ever purged. We didn't fire anybody. So now then that system has perpetuated itself and birthed new people. So now that you have more generals up there that were from that system that are saying the same things. Now, I just showed you just a short little compilation of there where many of them say it. Yesterday on MSNBC News, another retired three-star general went even further.
If Ukraine goes to the bargaining table or if Ukraine loses this war, you might as well say the U.S. lost the war. NATO has lost this war because remember, we backed Ukraine from the beginning in this war. NATO backed Ukraine from the beginning of this war. And if we abandon the Ukrainians, then we have lost just as much as the Ukrainians have lost. So I would much rather push forward, push hard. Let's get the funding in there. And then let's focus on not just this funding, but this war is going to take some time. I think it's going to take years. So they will need sustainable funding and predictable funding for the long term.
I am just shocked by that. Number one, I'm aggravated that the anchor who was doing that interview didn't question him on should have been the obvious questions afterwards. What do you mean that it's just as bad for America as it is for Ukraine? Ukraine cities have been wiped out. They have lost hundreds of thousands of people. It's not worse for us than it is for Ukraine on the first point. But the second one, it's not America's fault. It is not America's fault that they're losing because we're not giving them enough cash, guns, or whatever. If anyone needed any kind of proof, just look at the ground, folks. Just look at the ground. What's happened in the last 18 months? Ukraine had one brief period where they did a lot on the ground because of some bad Russian moves where they lost ground in the Kharkiv area and in Kherson region in the fall of 2022. Ever since that time, Russia got its act together. They solidified their lines. They've made a lot of internal changes. They have definitely improved their military capacity. And now then, after about a half a year of preparation and a half a year of execution, Ukraine did nothing to move the line. They did not recover anything after their attempted summer offensive, which has been covered in detail here on this channel. You can look back through our archives and you can see all you want to see on that. But the bottom line is, nothing changed. And now then, after giving about over $200 billion between the U.S. and Europe and thousands upon thousands of armored vehicles, millions of shells and rounds and rockets and everything else for that offensive that created nothing. Now then, we're trying to get half of that. And the Ukraine are trying to mobilize more men. And it's not clear that they're going to get anything else. So there is no prospect at all. Even if America doubled everything that it had done from 2022 to 2023, it's clearly not going to matter because the Russian side's not static. Look, I could go through and just tell you just in intimate detail so many things militarily why there is no path to a Ukrainian victory. How come you don't hear any of these generals telling you that? How come the only thing you see is what I just showed you a compilation of there, like this general from yesterday? All they're saying is it's our fault. General Hodges has said that many times on our channel here that we've put up. He said it's our fault. It's our failure, not Ukraine's. No, it's not. Now, upon what basis should the American people say, yes, I want to send another $100 billion of my money to Ukraine to fail? There is no prospect, zero. No one's even offering any rationale. Even Petraeus, whether it's Kirby, whether it's Milley, any of these people, no one is saying, okay, the reason why it failed before was A, B, and C, but now then with more money, we can go X, Y, and Z, and that will change the dynamics. There's no such X, Y, and Z. I could shred anybody who even attempted to make that argument, as I do often here. But they're not even making that argument. They're not even offering a fake excuse. They're simply saying We need to send them more money, or like this general yesterday, for years. We just need a sustained money flow. Folks, we can't even pass our own budget. We can't even fund our government. We don't even know if we're going to get another continuing resolution, or if we're going to be able to fund our defense, our national defense, beyond like a few days from now if it stops. And you want to send money on a perpetual basis to another country that will not work. Why do we want to do this, folks? Listen to me. It is time to start holding people accountable. It is time to start saying, look, you don't have to be a military genius to look at a map and see that after years of effort, it did zero on the map. Nothing happened. Everything is trending in Russia's path. Again, go back and watch some of our previous episodes where I laid out in detail exactly why the things are tilting more heavily towards the Russian side in combat power and national power than on the Ukraine side. Everything talks about that. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to have basic common sense and a willingness to see things as they are. Now, a lot of these people are counting on the fact that, like General Milley there, you see all these stars, or you see on their name a former 4-star general, and that's going to suddenly blind you, and you're going to go, okay, well, it doesn't look right to me, but hey, he's a 4-star general. He must be right. No, he's not right. Common sense does not trump, or common sense has not trumped the appearance of 4 stars on somebody's shoulders. You can be a private and you can look and you can see with your own eyes what's going on. Now, listen, folks, when this was an Afghanistan issue, it was embarrassment. I mean, it was horrible for the people of Afghanistan. But all this nonsense that we kept saying year after year that things were going fine, you know what that did? Not only did it lie to the American people and allow the rot to fester and the corruption to fester without change, we never did the things that were hard that might have changed the dynamics at some point by just admitting what's going on. We didn't do that. Instead, we kept this positive talk in there that everything's going fine. So, of course, no one's going to make any changes. All the money that we were given to Afghanistan, we could have put strings on there a long time ago. I argued in 2010 in an article that we should put strings on the money then that might have changed the dynamics and the outcome. Maybe the Afghan government would still be empowered today. Instead, they're not. And now, whether we're talking about Israel, we should be putting strings on that money. Money to Ukraine should have had strings on it. It should have said, hey, we're not going to fund something that's going to be counterproductive, that's not going to have any chance to win, but we didn't. We just said, here's a bunch of cash, and now we're asking for more. Even this general a minute ago, he didn't say anything about any changes. He just said, give them more money and don't ask questions and just let it keep going. Now, you can not like the new Speaker of the House, Johnson. Anybody can have their own views on there, but he is right on this. And Senator Rand Paul is also right on this. They're saying, hey, if we're going to give you any more money, tell me what the strategy is. What is your plan here? What is the end state? How is this money going to contribute to either a victory or American national defense? None of those things are offered. None of those things are provided. We don't have one. That's the reason why. It's just we need more cash. Throw more cash out, and then we'll ask for more later. Does anybody think that if the White House gets its $61 billion, that's going to be the end? You heard this general here. They want it to be a perpetual thing. So you'll just add it to the budget, I guess. And this America will perpetually spend our tax dollars for something that's not going to work for the benefit of another country. When they could say, okay, the situation on the ground does not facilitate a military victory. If we keep fighting, we're going to lose more people perpetually. It's not just cash. They're going to continue to lose more of their cities destroyed and more of their men wiped out. And it won't change the outcome. They should say, okay, this isn't going to work. It's time to do something different. We need to try, and with all humility and suck down whatever crow we need to have a negotiated settlement. It's time to end this. We can't keep going. That's what Ukraine should do, but they're not going to. Zelensky is just locked into this, and he still is operating on another planet and keep on thinking that things are going good himself. They're not, and no matter how positive he is, how much hope he offers, the ground truth still imposes reality over fantasy. That's just the truth of it. So if he's not going to do it, then what we should do is say, okay, even if the money eventually comes, we should say, This is a limited thing. It's a limited time and it's a limited amount. We're not just going to throw all this stuff again. We're not going to give you some large number of jets and tanks and artillery pieces and shells. We're going to give you enough to try and hold the line you have as long as you're working towards a negotiated settlement. Now, I know that's not popular. I know hardly anybody wants to hear that. But folks, listen to me. To say, I don't like that outcome, so I'm going to still go on this one. You know what that does? That condemns the Ukrainian people that we claim to support and that we claim to want to see their benefit. It means they're going to die in larger numbers for a longer period of time, and they're still going to lose. You understand what I'm saying here? It doesn't matter what we want. It matters what can be accomplished. And I'm all about pushing the envelope. I was a cavalry officer. I'm living on the edge. I loved it. That's why I served in that, because that's my mentality. And I will always push the edge to try and get something successful for our side. But like the Bible says, when two nations are going to war, the wise king will look at the balance of forces, and if he can't overcome the other side, he'll seek a negotiated settlement. That's biblical wisdom. But instead, we see the balance of power, and we know we can't overcome, and we're still wanting to throw more money at it and just hope that maybe things will just happen to be different. But they haven't been, and they're not going to be. So it is time, my friends, for us to acknowledge basic reality, to understand the balance of forces in the area will never be back in balance. Ukraine is not going to overcome Russia, and we should not keep throwing money around. That general is wrong. Plain and simple, he's wrong. And every American politician that keeps trying to push more money for Ukraine with no strings attached and no idea how it's going to accomplish anything for either Ukraine or America is wrong. We need to stop listening to them. Look at the track record for decades. It's time to make a change. Now, I don't have any power to do that, or I'd do it this afternoon, I promise you. But look, it's at least we have the truth is out there. And if you can, share this video with your congressman, share it with your newspaper, anyone you can. Let's amplify this and get it out there so more people can see the truth. Because see, a lot of people think, man, yeah, but a 4-star general said it, a 3-star general said that. And I mean, I didn't serve, so what do I know? You have common sense, and your intuition is right. What you see on the ground and what has happened is accurate. You are smarter than you think, and they're not as smart as they want to make you believe they are. And the evidence is irrefutable on the ground for nearly 2 years now. And 2 more years is not going to change the outcome. It's just going to get more people killed. And look, as I've said in one of my previous episodes here, when I now analyze this, Ukraine could literally lose the war. They might not even get a chance to have a negotiated settlement if we don't take some action pretty quick. If we care about Ukraine, it's time to do something different and change the dynamics. And if President Biden happens to be watching, you need to fire a bunch of these generals and bring some other people up who are willing to do the right thing and know what they're talking about. He may not be watching, but in case he is, I'm just throwing that out there. Well, listen, we thank you for watching. We remain unintimidated and uncompromised in bringing you the truth, no matter what it is, even if it's something people don't want to hear. It's right and it's true, and you deserve to hear it. Thank you very much. We're going to have David Sachs on later this afternoon at 5 p.m. You are not going to want to miss that. That guy's got some great views on some of our own issues about the United States and our own national debt and how that affects national security. Definitely want to tune in at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks, and we'll see you then.